Welcome to another episode of Well-Adjusted Mama. This is a podcast dedicated to educating and empowering women from preconception, pregnancy, birth, and through early motherhood on wellness lifestyle. I'm your host, Dr. Laura Brayton, and I'm a maternity pediatric chiropractor and mother who has hand-selected experts in natural holistic healthcare specialties to shine light on options and choices during this exciting phase of a woman's life. And this episode is sponsored by Inform Pregnancy Plus, which is a fantastic streaming platform for pregnancy and parenting. You can experience it for free at informpregnancy.tv. Today's episode is really an eye-opening one. The title is The Loaded Truth Behind Mommy Wine Culture, and my guest today was Celeste Yvonne. Sober mom advocate Celeste Yvonne is a writer and certified recovery coach with over 20 years of experience as a communications professional in corporate America. Her essays on parenting, the mental load of motherhood, mommy wine culture, and sobriety resonates with mothers everywhere and has been featured in the Washington Post, Good Morning America, Today's Show, and Refinery 29, among others. She's also a contributing writer to the Wall Street Journal and Publishers Weekly bestseller, So God Made a Mother. Over 5 years sober and a founding host of the Sober Mom Squad, Celeste advocates for mothers who struggle with addiction and mental health. She's a recipient of the Windfelt Inspire Award by the Dry Society Social Club, as well as a 2-time winner of Red Tricycle's Spoke Challenge for Best Writing. She lives in Reno, Nevada with her husband and 2 children. Hi, Celeste. Welcome to the show. I'm very excited to have you on today.
Thanks, Laura. I'm so glad to be here.
So we're going to talk a little bit about your story and your book that just came out, and really about this mommy wine culture and pressures for women as they're becoming new moms and all the way through their entire motherhood journey of this pressure to need substances, I guess food, alcohol, drugs, whatever, right, to cope with the intensity of motherhood. And so I'm really excited to hear more about your story.
Thank you. Yeah, it's funny because, I'm 5 years sober, but if you had told me 6 years ago, I would be talking about this topic, let alone have a book out on it. I would, surprised would be, to say the least, because I was so in the thick of it up until I quit, and really relying on alcohol to cope in the best way I could, in the best way I knew how, and in the way that it sounded like other mothers were coping. So, I've always been a partier, a gray area drinker, that gray middle ground between just an occasional drinker and can't cope without alcohol. But something had changed when I became a mother, and my drinking shifted from more of the social lubricant to a more isolated experience where I was doing it alone, where I was doing it because motherhood was hard and I needed something to take the edge off. And it was such a simple thing, and it made perfect sense at the time. And it didn't raise any alarm bells because I had heard, I had seen on social media, I had seen through so many communications that alcohol was a reprieve for motherhood. It was a tool to keep in our toolkit, that mommy needs wine, in every aspect. So I transitioned the way I drank from the social side to more of the coping side of this. And I think that is really where the first red flag should have been waving high in the sky. But I looked all around me and everyone else seemed to be doing the same thing. So it felt harmless. And genuinely, I was like, I have nothing else. So don't take my wine from me too. I think there was almost a little fear in there. Like, I have lost so much in motherhood. Don't take this from me too. And there was, it really felt like it came down to survival at some point, in motherhood with mental health, feeling so depleted. We lose sleep, our nutrition can go down. We are more inclined to postpartum anxiety and depression. I went through all of that. And my coping mechanism turns out, an extremely harmful coping mechanism. And not just in that it's extremely addictive, but it's a depressant. We know this about alcohol now, but I feel like the lines we feed mothers is that it's harmless, that if you're having just a couple a day, it's no big deal, that it goes through your system and it's safe. When in fact, the science behind that was showing me when I got sober, quite the opposite, and that it was having such a severe impact over my anxiety and depression, two things that I was working so hard to address at these times. So now, I go into my sobriety hoping I can share this information with other moms so they don't fall down the same trap I did.
Got it. And your book is called It's Not About the Wine, The Loaded Truth Behind Mommy Wine Culture. I'm sure we could have replaced wine with other types of alcoholic beverages. And what about like even marijuana, other substances, junk food? I mean, it could be anything that's toxic and not really fueling our health and vitality as women, right? So I know that in the beginning you were a new mom, you were suffering with postpartum mood disorder. You went to your obstetrician for help and they were not very helpful.
Yeah. So what happened was I was a few months into my firstborn. He was showing signs of colic. And as a new mom, I just felt like I was failing in every aspect of this. And then add to that early signs of postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety. My mom was the one who's like, call your doctor. Like, something's not right. Something's off. And I did. So I called her, and this really is it takes courage to reach out as a mother and say, I need help.
Right.
It really felt like I was failing already. The fact that I needed to call my doctor this early on. So even from that standpoint, like I'm so proud of myself for saying, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be vulnerable and tell my doctor that I'm not feeling good. So I called her. I said, I'm not feeling good. I'm having intrusive thoughts. I'm going on no sleep and I just don't feel mentally well. And she said to me, you either need to go to the local psychiatric ward in our region or you'll be fine and everything will pass. And those were my two options. And so I quickly, downplayed it. I'm like, okay, no, it's fine. I'm good. Thanks. Bye. Realizing if I was genuinely truthful and told her exactly what was going on in my head and the fears I was having, they were going to send me away from my child. And I could not think of anything worse than that.
Right.
In the place I was at that time, that sounded like the absolute worst case scenario. So I underplayed it. I downplayed my symptoms. I brushed it off and I made a mental note, don't ever go there with anyone again. And it was devastating, for any new mother to have that kind of professional response where those are your only two options when there's so many options we can be offering new mothers and presented in a much more sympathetic, loving way. So, I feel like that was one of the first times where I was like, Celeste, you're going to have to figure it out on your own.
I have to say, when I saw that, that was the response of the OB, I actually assumed it was a male OB. And now I'm hearing it wasn't. So that's even a little more shocking to me. Yeah. Where's the bedside manner? Where's the empathy? Where's that like, oh, wow, it sounds like you're really going through a hard time. There's some great new moms resources. I mean, clearly the doctor was not aware of any of these types of support groups, but like if a woman is a new mom especially that fourth trimester, certainly exhausted, sleep deprived, and potentially has a baby that's crying for hours a day, right? They're colicky, they're gassy, they're uncomfortable, which makes, like you said, mom feel like I can't help my baby feel well. I'm a failure. What are some of the resources that are available to help support this mom who is struggling emotionally?
Well, I mean, like you mentioned, there are support groups. There are so many, even just podcasts and books and social media accounts devoted to the fourth trimester and to helping mothers navigate that early time frame. But, in my experience, I just needed a new OB. I needed to get I needed medication to help me with where I was at. Those were the resources that I wound up going to. But, knowing what I know now, there are support groups for mothers to help us get through this time. I wish there was more support, though, frankly. I wish we were in a place where mothers didn't feel so thrown to the side when the baby's born and it becomes all about the baby. I wish that the postpartum support was just more heavily focused on mental health and more than just a quick questionnaire, check boxes to check about whether or not you might be struggling with postpartum depression. Some doctors still don't even check for postpartum anxiety. So we still have a ways to go in that. And I do think we leave a lot of mothers feeling under-supported or afraid to speak out like I was.
Right. And there's like the shame, right? Like I'm a bad mom, when that's not the case at all. It's just you're not receiving the support and help that you need. So I do think universally, because this is something that comes up in every episode, is the mama self-care. And women that are in this survival mode, that are just literally going day to day, like barely surviving, there is no room for self-care in a situation like that, right? So, support is huge. So, how do women get the support they need? How do they ask for the support they need? It might be a support group, but also like somebody just so they can take a nap, right? Somebody to watch the baby, something, really childcare, right? So that they can start to feel like I go for a walk or go to my chiropractor or whatever, just to take care of their needs, putting their needs first, right? Over the baby's.
And if you're in a relationship, during these early months, it's a critical time for communication and to be talking with your partner about changing the household labor expectations that have already been maybe set in the family and shifting those around to accommodate what is now a full-time job on top of whatever the parents are already doing. And that's not something that anyone or that I was prepared for in any case. And thinking to myself that by me now asking my partner to step in more also felt like a failure, because we have such impossible parenting standards around what a mother should look like and what a mother doing it all looks like. And it's not asking for help. It's making everything look seamless and easy. And these expectations have so many people feeling like, even just by having the conversations and saying, I need better support, we need to shift the dynamic around in our household and with childcare responsibilities. And I need time for myself. I mean, that's something else that I think feels really selfish in early motherhood. I remember in my own experience, my husband, like within the first couple of weeks of the baby, my husband was going out getting his pilot's license, and he'd be gone for chunks of the day. And me thinking, gosh, that'd be so nice, but I can't do that anymore. And that's not true. If I could have if I had the conversation with him and said, I would like to take breaks in the day too, we could have made things work. We could have done things differently, but I felt like by saying that I was a bad mom, I was selfish. I wasn't this selfless person that I envisioned I would become when I had a child.
Mother Mary, right?
Yeah.
And not only a bad mom, but also potentially a bad wife, right?
Yeah.
So there's like a double standard there. So, I mean, how do we, this is like some cultural, generational blueprinting. And part of it also, I think, was, back, like at least my mother was stay-at-home mom and my grandmother was. So like we see like past generations, women did work from home and stayed home and did all those things. But even then, after giving birth, they needed extra help, right? Especially if they had other children to care for. And I'm assuming they also probably didn't get a lot of help from their partners within that area with the household and the childcare. So we're looking to shift this balance. And part of it is having communication, like you mentioned, within your own household. What are the expectations? And those can start during the pregnancy, right? And what else do you recommend for women to get their needs met, essentially?
Yeah. Having the conversations, redistributing chores and making it an active conversation that you are checking in on, because things are going to change as the baby's needs change as well. Or as you decide to, a feeding routine, or if you're going to do breast milk or formula. All these are going to factor into the schedule and how time consuming things are going to be for each person. So doing regular check-ins, then, I would say, one thing I got from a local psychiatrist here in town, who's also a mental health or a couple counselor, she said she always encourages couples to each commit themselves to 3 hours a week. That's just for them. Where the partner will then watch the child. And that is 3 hours of judgment-free, whatever you want to do time for yourself. And it sounds so simple.
Is it a block of time?
Yes.
Okay.
Like a one period, a chunk of time that can be devoted specifically to whatever you want to do with no shame. Like if you want to watch reality TV for 3 hours, that is your right. If you want to scroll social media, absolutely. Like you have there's no expectation that you have to check back in and commit yourself to accounted for time. So that was one thing I love, because I think that was one of the struggles I had in early motherhood, was not being afraid to ask for that. And not insisting on it. Now for new mothers, I would insist on that for them on their behalf, because it's so important, and it doesn't make you selfish. It makes you taking care of yourself in the best way you can. And that is what makes a good mom, is a mom who can take care for themselves.
That's right.
So those were all things that I would encourage, as well as seeking out outside support, whatever that looks like. If that's marriage counseling, if that is hiring outside help, if you can afford it, if that is trying to get family members to pitch in, or even doing trade-offs with neighbors for date nights.
Right.
What can that look like in your house? And in your community that might be out of the box thinking, but different ways that we can kind of create that village where there otherwise is none.
Right. And that's a good point. In the past, maybe there was grandparents or other family members that could help out. And if you have that, that's a great resource. But I love the idea, even like if you don't have the money to pay for a sitter, that you just use, your neighbors and it's a play date, right? And you get one weekend, they get the next weekend. Like, there's just that value in supporting each other and finding those like-minded families that are understanding the importance of this. And I think another thing too, as you were sharing in your media thing, was about like how like when you had just given birth, people were coming like to congratulate you on the baby and bringing a bottle of wine. Like that is so counterintuitive to me as a healthcare practitioner, a woman who's just, you're not pregnant anymore. So technically you can drink, right? Even though it's not optimal with breastfeeding, your body is recovering from an intense process of making and birthing a baby. So why not something healing and nourishing to fuel her body in that recovery, as opposed to a depressant?
I mean, right? It sounds so, it just sounds so obvious. And yet here we are. Like I had family members bring champagne to the hospital the day after both my children were born. I had friends bring wine. The best gift I ever got coming home from the hospital was a friend who was a mother, so she probably knew that this is just a great gift, bringing a meal in disposable containers, so I wouldn't have to return the containers back to her.
Right.
That was the best. And she just dropped it off.
Yeah.
It was such a gift because it was one day where I didn't have to think about what I was going to make for dinner. And it's a simple thing that we can do. And it's much more productive and supportive and health-minded than wine or beer or alcohol, which kind of sends this message that you'll need this because motherhood's hard. So, there's a kind of a construct behind it, a humorous construct in that, yes, motherhood's hard. You'll need this, but it sends also a problematic message, a dangerous message, and it communicates something that could otherwise be misconstrued to be something that mothers need to survive motherhood.
Right. If you are in a quest for empowerment and information, I highly encourage you to dive into the world of knowledge and support with Informed Pregnancy Plus, your all-in-one streaming platform dedicated to guiding you through every step of your pregnancy, birth, and postpartum journey. You can stream a growing library of 20 documentaries, including ionic films like Orgasmic Birth and The Business of Being Born, which have revolutionized the way we view childbirth and maternal care. These groundbreaking films, along with our extensive library of films, web series, workouts, make Informed Pregnancy Plus an unparalleled resource. Dr. Elliot Berlin and the team at Informed Pregnancy Plus just announced their newest edition, a vitally important course called the Core Connection, From Anatomy to Action. This exclusive 5-episode series is a must-watch for anyone looking to enhance their pelvic floor and core strength during and after pregnancy. Discover the essentials of pelvic floor health, learn vital postural adjustments, explore muscle releases, and master breathing techniques for a stronger core. This empowering series equips you with the tools to maintain balance in your pelvic floor and core muscles, ensuring optimal functions throughout your pregnancy journey. It's all included with your subscription of less than $7 a month. Ready to transform your pregnancy and parenting experience? Check out informedpregnancy.tv today or download the Informed Pregnancy Plus app on Apple, Android, or Roku. Start your free trial now and join the community of informed and empowered parents. And I think what was interesting too, we were talking briefly before we started recording, like this isn't just applicable to like a brand new mom, although I even remember like I did not want to drink after, those first several months because I was so exhausted. Like a hangover was just like like, no, thank you. I don't want to deal with that. I already feel hungover from just like lack of sleep. But even like once kids are now in school, the culture can continue. So there's a different type of intensity of being a mother as your child gets older. And then even as they leave the nest and they go off, and there's all these different phases of motherhood. And as women and coming together in this sisterhood, there can be this like dependency from what I'm hearing about like, let's get drinks, and like there's a bonding that's created from that. And I guess we could see that with men too. Like there could be bonding over cigars and whiskey or whatever, but like what is this? And like, it isn't just for brand new moms either.
It's not. And I think, as your children grow, you start to see it more around birthday parties, play dates, and moms trying to connect with each other. I mean, how many times have we seen jokes about needing alcohol at the PTA meetings and whatnot? The message just kind of evolves. And it's this social narrative that jokes or implies that moms specifically need alcohol to cope with raising their children. And it's a harmful message that is contained in a pretty package of it's harmless and it's humorous. But the message, puts the weight of our struggles on our children. The implication that our children are the reason why we need to drink, is not a message that I would want my children to hear. I don't think any parent would genuinely want their children to feel that guilt, that they are this burden on their parents. And yet that is the message that comes out with every mommy needs wine coffee mug, or, the Etsy onesie that says my kid, or I'm the reason mommy drinks. I mean, it's everywhere. And even if your kid's a newborn and can't read it, when they get older and see that picture pop up, they'll read it then, they'll get the message. So I think it does send such a negative message to our children. And I say that, as a child of an alcoholic who, experienced firsthand the hardship of watching my father with a drinking problem. But I can't even imagine if he also then walked around with a shirt that said, my kids are the reason I drink. So, that's something that I hope people keep in mind, when they put out the videos and the memes and they buy the mugs. And it also distracts us from the real issues, which is, why is this message so prevalent? And it's because we need better support in all these aspects, right? I feel like mothers are here. We're in this place because we are undersupported and undervalued in anything and everything we do. And we're also in this place right now where mothers are returning back to work at a bigger percentage than we ever have before. So to have the continued expectations of always being on in motherhood, but also having a full-time job, but you're still responsible for all the household labor and the majority of the child rearing, but you're still in a full-time job. It's just, it's an impossible precedent, and puts so many mothers in a place of how on earth do you expect me to be everywhere at once and be doing everything? And so then we lean on this message. Well, mommy needs wine, even if we're not saying that specifically, like the effort, maybe we're really trying to say, this is really hard. And, we just need this collective joke to recognize how hard it is. It's still shifting the message away from how can we better support mothers in every aspect. Because that's where I feel like we are doing mothers such a disservice, from the lack of postpartum support, the impossible parenting standards, the lack of flexibility in the workplace. We're still in full-time jobs. There's still this expectation to be there 40 hours a week, even as we have fall break and spring break and summer, and we're navigating kids being sick from school or getting the phone calls from the principal. And it's just a really hard place to be. And our corporate culture has not evolved to accommodate parents in that way. So there's just so many things burdening moms. I think that's why we see this huge increase in women's drinking right now, is for all these things that's really spiraled to this place where we are drinking more than we've ever drunk before, and where, we're seeing the cannabis mom message starting to also come into play a lot.
Big time. I was definitely going to say that is just like, that's the next alcohol. And it's almost even more deceiving, because it's like, this is healthier, right? Or this is healthy. It's
Absolutely.
so much better than drinking alcohol. So, you're trading one, self-medication for another. It's all about masking, numbing, avoiding, drowning, the emotions, right? So it's not healthy. That's the bottom line, right? Can you talk a little bit about the stats around women's drinking for people that are not aware?
Yeah. So we have been seeing women increase their alcohol use consistently over the last decade. A huge report came out in the Journal of the American Medical Association, JAMA, that talked to a huge spike in women's drinking, to where we are now drinking almost at the same rate as men, whereas before it was significantly lower. And that was in 2012. That was over a decade ago. Now what we're seeing is, since the pandemic,
right,
the numbers are even higher.
I'm sure it was so high during the pandemic too.
Yes. And we are, almost at the same levels as men, but the stats around women's binge drinking, high risk drinking, which I think for women is 4 or more drinks, and women going to the ER for alcohol related visits. The spike is so alarming. And that's just in the past couple years. So we have seen this. I think it's safe to say, as a direct result of the pandemic. And the hope is it will now taper back down. We won't know probably for another year or two when we get those reports back. But as a sober mom coach, I don't see anything going down in terms of the people I'm talking to, the people that reach out to me. So I can only hope that that's where we're headed. But I don't see it firsthand.
You said this was spiking before the pandemic even existed. And not all these women are moms, right? Some of them might be teenagers, college age, young professionals. But there is certainly societal pressures or whatever, sororities. I don't know where all of it's coming from, but it's toxic regardless, right? And deadly. You can die. DUIs, are real, and alcohol poisoning, can be fatal. Like, this is, a real thing.
Now I feel like the change we've seen in just the past couple of years is we're actually seeing major news talk about the dangers of any sort of alcohol use, not just heavy drinking. And that's, while that's been something that science and research has known for a while, to see news actually cover it is a huge change. And I think it's a good thing, because we have stopped, sugarcoating what alcohol is and what it does in this society that we live in, where, you have to explain yourself for not drinking. It's the only drug you need to explain not using.
Right.
In American culture.
It's so true. I'll never forget, like I would have, and this could be men and women in my practice, if they were out at a business, like a networking event or a business dinner, I was like, okay, we need to do a cleanse. You got to drop those 30 pounds. You have all these signs of inflammation. And it's like, no alcohol for a month, right? Like not forever, just for a month. And they're like, well, I can't do that because I have this event, I have this event. And it was like, why do you have to, like, who cares? Like, why do you have to explain yourself going to a professional work event, whether or not your glass has soda water or it has, gin and soda? Like, I'm like, that just blows me away. And, some of these people were like, no, this is important for my stature as a professional.
It's mind blowing, isn't it? That we are still here. I was actually just talking to a close friend of mine last week, and she has to go into New York City for her job. And she says she still is regularly pressured by her boss to drink alcohol, even though she lost interest in it a few years ago. And she's still she feels like she's being treated like a child when he says, like, you can have just one. This is a job that requires drinking. Oh, she's going to be like that again, everybody, just very
peer
mocking, peer pressuring. And this is her boss.
Right.
So, even with that power dynamic, just to hear that we're still there in some places infuriates me, because she's somebody who doesn't identify as having a drinking problem. So she has no problem being like, screw you. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I can't imagine myself when I was maybe in my very early recovery. If I were to be pushed back like that and feel like my job might be at stake, I probably would have caved. And I can't imagine how many other people would feel that kind of pressure. And that's just not okay.
It's not okay. And, to your point, what if somebody has a family history of addiction, alcoholism, and or a personal history themselves? And, it's almost like you have to say, well, I'm sober, right? You have to go there and then that person will back off and leave you alone. But it's none of their fucking business, right? So you should just be able to order what you want to drink, and your status as somebody who's a, recovering alcoholic is not appropriate in the workplace. This is nothing that they need to know about. You're taking care of yourself by ordering a non-alcoholic beverage. So that is mind blowing. And, my practice being in the New York area, I certainly hear what you're saying about like that city, high city vibe. It's just, there's a lot of that going on. And it's just very accepted. And I will say, now New York and New Jersey have legalized marijuana. That's like an entry drug. And then I'm seeing people like all of a sudden becoming cocaine addicts. It's like this slippery slope. I had a couple drinks and then I had a gummy. And before I know it, I'm tracking down my coke dealer. And this was a good friend of mine. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, this is like, we're not, and not to say this is even good college behavior, but I'm like, we're professionals, decades into our businesses. Like, what are you like getting addicted to coke now? Like but this is what's happening for people that are really stressed and dealing with intense, like not having ways to channel their stress and having lifestyle habits and rituals that are supporting their mental and emotional health and physical health too.
Oh, 100%. And growing up, as many of us grew up in a generation that was taught not to sit with negative feelings, that negative feelings aren't okay, and to be afraid of them. I mean, I can't tell you for how long I just did not understand that having negative feelings was something that was okay to feel and that it would pass. I felt like I was crawling out of my skin and I needed something to take the edge off without learning proper coping tools. I think about my children and what I want them to learn as they get older. They're 7 and 9 now, so they're still fairly young. But if I'm drinking every single night, in front of them, and if they ask why, and I'm saying, well, mommy needs wine, what am I teaching them? I'm teaching them not to deal with emotions, not to learn how to regulate them, and to numb them out whenever they get mildly uncomfortable.
It's so true. I mean, we are modeling this behavior, and it's not that you're like drunk, right? Walking around your house, but it's that one, at least one glass of wine every single night while you're watching a TV show together as a family or whatever. It's just like, I can't live without this wine or beverage or whatever it is. And, it is like, but that's not true. Right. And so, I think in general, what I find is that, how do people support their physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health, right? Like what, all of these substances are non-supportive of health in general, right? So what do we do in lieu to help us when we are feeling overwhelmed? The double standard you mentioned of women having it all, which is just really like having almost like more than any is he like superwoman, right? Like, so like where do we find our joy, our purpose, our balance? We, wanted to be mothers so much, right? And now we have these beautiful children in front of us. We want to have a career, right? So there's a choice with that. We have high expectations about how clean and neat our house is, right? Which our partners may not care about. So where is this all coming in? And how do we just have that joy that doesn't need an edge to be taken off of?
Right. And, I think it really is maybe putting less focus on the external and putting more emphasis on the internal and taking care of yourself. I'm not saying self-care on purpose because I think the word self-care has been so diluted, but looking inward for more answers, whether that mean growing your spirituality, whether that mean doing more things around mental health and taking care of your mental health. Support groups, in my sobriety, support groups has been critical because studies show that, community and having community support can help with so many things in a unique way that even individual therapy can't hit quite the same levels. So I always encourage people to find a community, and you can do that through support groups, so sober focused or not. But that is going to be a great place for you to be able to have that outlet with other people who might be in the same stages of life that you're at and going through the same things, for you to be able to talk and to listen. I think about that. I think about time in nature, which for me is probably the greatest equalizer. And whatever that looks like, in a busy mother day, that might be me sitting in my backyard for a couple minutes. That, I'm not saying go on a 10-hour nature hike each weekend. If you can, great. But it really is just finding the joy in what you have around you and what you can create, what kind of space you can create around you.
Right. And when we're feeling that stress and that overwhelm, it's very ungrounding, right? And then you can't even like get out of that almost fight or flight survival mode. So what you're saying is with the care that we set aside for ourselves, that's non-negotiable. And time in nature is also very healing. It just helps us kind of root into Mother Earth, know that we are supported so much, right? Even by our angels and all the other things that are available to us, and having clarity about like what's urgent, what's non-urgent. I find that was a game changer for me even before I became a mom, where I was caught up in all the to do, check. It's like some of those things can get done a week from now, and some things need to get done today. Right. And maybe it's something that I need to sit and create, and I need to block off 2 hours for that, but I'm not going to fill it up with busy work. You know what I mean? Because that is non-urgent. So really, I think also really understanding like how you use your time and value your time. And so when your kids are around, you can be totally present and mindful with them and not worried about like, oh, I didn't do this, and this on my list. Right. So that really that deeper connection and nature and with our families.
And maybe also even tapping into creativity or creating in general, making space to do something that you genuinely enjoy doing, whether or not you're good at it. And that can be art, that can be music. That's something that, even maybe you found it as a child and you always loved it, but you stopped doing it because you either weren't good at it or it wasn't, maybe it was frowned upon to, play with whatever it is, Legos by the time you turn 30. But if that's something, if creating whatever that looks like, fills your heart, you are taking care of yourself in such a unique way that you probably can't get elsewhere. You can't get at work. You can't get in parenting. So to make those moments for creativity, in any aspect can be very fulfilling. And I think we need to give ourselves permission to do that.
And you can do that as some family time. I love building Legos with my son, but also what I'm hearing, this is really just unique and special for you. It's just time for you to play the piano. I know, I haven't played the piano in decades because I didn't have a piano in front of me, but I would love to play the piano again,
Yes.
It was a big part of my childhood. And what a beautiful gift to myself. Even if no one listens, no one hears, I'm sure I would be rusty in the beginning, but it doesn't even matter. It's just, and it's also, as we're saying this out loud, what is that doing for my mind and my anti-aging and longevity and keeping my neurons firing when I'm doing these types of things like art or music or whatever, and especially something that potentially I'm not great at, learning another language.
Yes.
I am strengthening the neurons in my brain and actually helping to ward off dementia, Alzheimer's, other things that can hit us middle age and later. Because I'm using my brain in a different way.
Exactly.
Yeah. I want to ask one last question before we get off this interview. What is a sober mom coach?
A sober mom. Well, so I'm a sober coach, but I specifically work with sober moms. I am IAPRC certified. So I work with people who are either identify as in recovery for alcohol use disorder, or they are a gray area drinker and just kind of curious of what life could be like without alcohol. And I work specifically with mothers because I feel like we have a unique situation in front of us. We have unique pressures. We are all navigating mommy wine culture. And I try to work with my clients on how do we find all these things that we've just been talking about, for this podcast, without feeling inclined to drink, without feeling pressured to drink. How do we find fulfillment? How do we regulate ourselves when motherhood is so dysregulating, and how can we find fulfillment and release at the end of the day in a way that isn't harmful or dangerous and that nourishes us and our body. So that's what I work with my clients on.
Wow, that's amazing. And so somebody could go to your website and do a virtual consult with you.
Yes. And we could talk about what their goals are and how to create the life they're looking to live through intentions and through goal setting and through education and knowledge.
And your website's CelesteYvonne.com.
Yes.
And Facebook, Instagram, The Ultimate Mom Challenge.
Yes. And I also host meetings every week with Sober Mom Squad, which is a great community for any mothers who are looking to live or learn more about sober-free living.
Wonderful.
So alcohol-free living, sober living.
Sober living. Celeste, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Thanks, Laura. I appreciated being here.
Well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode and this interview with Celeste. Her book, It's Not About Wine, The Loaded Truth Behind Mommy Wine Culture, is a must read. I think it's really an important topic that we talk about, just the social norm of moms needing to drink wine or other types of addictive chemicals in order to survive motherhood. And it is a systemic sign that moms are not receiving the amount of support that they desperately need and deserve. So check out her book. And also, if you want to find more information about Celeste Yvonne or connect with her, you can find her at celesteyvonne.com or at Facebook and Instagram at The Ultimate Mom Challenge.